Today we're returning to the peak of Pokemon Emerald ROM hacks, Elite Redux. I've covered the game already in 2023, but ever since then a couple of updates have dropped and the game is almost unrecognizable, as it's kind of like Pokemon Radical Red, but on steroids. As Pokemon can now have 4 abilities, and speaking of abilities, there's a ton of custom ones that make proper changes to Pokemon that are normally not viable or make some of them absolutely broken. And it's not just 1 or 2, no, there's over 200 new custom abilities. Grinding is also not necessary in this game, as you can just put your Pokemon at the level cap whenever you want. You can also change their natures and add in all the EVs you need so you can build your perfect team. Completing the Pokédex is also very easy because every Pokeball has a 100% catch rate, so you can use any Pokemon you want, and you also auto-heal before every battle, so there's no running back to the Pokemon Center. A lot of the events in Pokemon Emerald have also been optimized, so you don't have to go to Sky Pillar to get Rayquaza, for example, so you can put all of your focus on the gameplay itself. There's about 1 million more quality of life things this game has introduced, but by far my favorite is the custom fakemon. They have added in a ton of new evolutions for already existing Pokemon. On top of this, there's more than 40 new Mega Evolutions that you've never seen before, and the tip of the iceberg, over 60 new regional forms. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. We're going to try and beat Pokemon Elite Redux with only new Pokemon. And by the end of the video, I want to know what your favorite was down in the comments below. But can these awesome new designs beat this entire game that's actually pretty difficult? Let's find out together. As you start off your game, a ton of settings get thrown at your face, like difficulty, level cap, randomizers, and even permanent Mega Evolution and Nuzlocke mode. I didn't mess with these too much, just turned on level caps, and that's kind of it. After this, you spawn into your bed, May comes into your room, asks you what kind of starter Pokemon you'd like. You can choose out of any region or any typing depending on what you like. For me, this didn't matter because none of the selections had new regional forms, so I just went with the Steel typing. She then leaves to go tell her dad, and when you go downstairs, your mom hands you the old rod and a coin case. I don't know how I would feel if my mother promoted gambling to me, but I headed out of that house as quickly as I could and ran into some wild animal attacks instead. So we decide to steal Aeron to beat up Rocket Raccoon, and Professor Birch thanks me by giving me the Aeron forever. I repay his thanks by plopping this Aeron into the PC, never to be used again, and made my way over to Oldale Town, where a nice employee of the local animal shelter showed me how things work around here. You see, considering you already have everything in this game, Pokédollars are kind of redundant. So they changed them with battle points. You can exchange these battle points for regional forms right here in the Adoption Center, and you unlock more regional forms the more gym badges you collect. Right now, I only had the choice between Pansear, Pansage, and Pampur, one of them being a fighting type, the other dark, and the last one psychic. I went with the dark type Pansear for my very first Pokemon, and that was the only thing I could get for now. I'd have to beat more trainers if I wanted to get the other two. There was one thing I had left to do before challenging my first victim, and that was check out my Pansear's abilities. He has Unburden, Ambush, Prankster, and Gluttony. If you take a quick look, 2 of these abilities are absolutely going to be key: Ambush and Prankster, giving me a guaranteed critical hit on the first turn and getting priority on every single status move I use. And you can also change your first ability to any of 3 your Pokemon has available, so I changed that one to Technician to boost all of my low base power attacks. After changing him to an Adamant nature with max attack and speed, I took on the first trainer, May. But I'm just going to quickly mention that I lost to her about 10 times before I even realized I could change the stats and abilities on my Pokemon. So after giving my little monkey another life orb to boost its attack even more, I went back to May, used a couple of Fake Outs and Fire Fangs to take both of her Pokemon out swiftly and get my first amount of battle points. With that win under my belt, I thought I could take on the world, but I got shut down immensely by the first trainer on the next route. He had a full team of 6 Pokemon, and my little monkey just didn't have the strength nor survivability to take him on his own. And I didn't have enough battle points to buy any of the other 2 monkeys, so instead I had to capture a Beautifly in order to help me out through the first couple of fights. The butterfly was more than enough to help me through the first round, which allowed me to buy Panpour and Pansage. The former has Mystic Power, which makes every move stab, so giving it a 1.5 times power boost, and Super Luck as well as Neural Force, which all seem like broken abilities, but keep in mind that all my opponents also have 4 abilities, so we're definitely battling on a level playing field. Pansage also had Technician as well as Precise Fists and Guts, which gives him an extra critical hit rate on punching moves, and their effects are 5 times more common to activate. Unfortunately, this is all that's available to me before the first gym, so we set out to see our dad. The entire Wally event is skipped, which is a nice change of pace, and your dad basically doesn't want to challenge you until you have 4 gym badges. And because I want to make him proud and wipe the floor with him, I set my first goal: defeat Flannery as fast as possible. And of course, my dreams got crushed immediately as the first trainer in Petalburg Woods was a bug-type specialist with 6 Pokemon again. My team isn't particularly good against bug-type Pokemon, 2 of them being weak against them and the other one not being able to do a lot of damage. So yeah, I did have to get the help of Beautifly again to get through this fight too. So I guess the answer to can you beat Pokemon Elite Redux with just regional forms is no, but once the first gym is defeated and we get all of the other forms, things become a lot more manageable. So we beat up the Team Aqua Grunt and get a useless EXP share as a reward, then finally arrive in Rustboro where I trade my Gothita for a Pawniard, which is going to be great against Roxanne. Because I already predict that my monkeys are not going to be able to get through Roxanne's hard rock exterior. When I entered the gym, I saw a total redesign and actually learned that most trainers are optional. They never engage battle with you first, you have to go up to them if you want to fight them, which is a good thing. Although some gym leaders require you to beat every trainer in order to progress. And because I needed all the battle points I could get, I took all of them on and then went over to Roxanne herself. Her first Pokemon is a Galarian Stunfisk that sets up 2 layers of spikes and a Stealth Rock before my Pansage takes it out with 2 reversals. Switching in for me now becomes extremely dangerous, but I'm ready for it, as the next Pokemon she sends out is a Rock-type Reduxian Clefairy, who Moonblasts my monkey out of here. I use my Beautifly single beams to take it out just like the next Pokemon Nosepass, but because I got paralyzed, Stunjourner is able to hit a 4 times super effective Rock against me, which means we're forced to swap out into Aeron. I'm only able to hit a single Smart Strike before this thing also bites the dust, then I swap in Pansear, use a Fake Out and 2 bites, which end up flinching, and because of that, we are able to take down Stormjourner and do major damage against the final Pokemon Amora, who's no match for Pampour's Chilling Water. With the Stone Badge acquired, I wasted no time and headed straight back to the Adoption Center to see what they had in store. Currently, they're still all costing 15 points each, and I only have 75, so I was only able to get 5 new Pokemon until I beat more trainers. So I picked up the best looking ones in my opinion. These consisted of a Fire-Water type Solosis with Overcoat, Hydration, Flaming Soul, and Adaptability, giving it priority to Fire type moves at full HP, increasing its stab move damage from 1.5 to 2, and giving it an incredibly nice yin and yang design. It's also high enough level so that it could immediately evolve into Duosion, and I did that with the rest of my team as well. Getting a Ghost Electric type Loudred with Loudbang, White Noise, Galvanize, and Amplifier. So if this thing uses a sound type move, the opponent is going to be deaf and probably also dead. I also got myself a Fighting Dark type Kadabra with Intimidate, Cheap Tactics, Nocturnal, and Bad Luck, allowing him to use the move Scratch every time he switches in, all the while boosting his own Dark type moves and taking less damage from Fairy type moves, but the best ability is by far the last one, where the foe is always going to hit the lowest damage roll with 5% less accuracy and can't crit. And if you thought he was impressive, take a look at this Ice Poison type Beedrill with Freezing Point, Skill Link, Exploit Weakness, and Levitate. I mean, if you poison a foe, your attacks are going to be 1.25 times stronger, and with Skill Link, moves like Icicle Spear become 125 base power, which is just insane. On top of this, you have a 30% chance to inflict Frostbite on the foe every time you hit them, and because Icicle Spear is always going to hit 5 times, you're almost guaranteed to put a status condition on your opponent. The last one, Fluffbee, was by far the worst one I picked up, with the Bug Fairy type having Gooey, quickly levitate Fluffy and run away. Once I was done giving them all the appropriate items, stats, and abilities, I keelhauled a pirate in a cave and brought the seagull back to his owner to get free boat rides. I then talked to the mayor and got the title of Aspiring Citizen, even though I don't live in this city. And Roxanne had heard tales of my heroic deeds, and because of that, she gave me her anorith to cut down trees with. Because of all the trainers we just defeated, I also grabbed the last 3 remaining Pokemon before the next gym, which were Cleffa, Corm, and Stuffle, and while the latter 2 didn't really get used until later in the run, I did immediately evolve Cleffa into its final form, Clefable. And with the abilities Magic Guard, Solid Rock, Dazzling, and Nocturnal, this thing is going to become a tank that's basically not going to die. I probably shouldn't have worded it that way because the first thing it did was die against Maze Grovyle. Not that that mattered because Fluffy was able to handle it from there. After this, I had a sick boat ride to Dewford Town, where my first task was talking to Steven Stone back in Granite Cave. Normally you just hand him a letter and that is that, but here you actually have to fight him, which I think is a pretty cool addition, which proves that the champion also goes through his own struggles, namely getting his ass beat by me. You see, he starts off with a Metang that gets an insane punishment from my Kadabra, taking it out in just 2 shots. He was able to do some damage with Meteor Mash and set up Stealth Rocks though, so Delmise finished me off the turn after, but Beedrill's Ice Shard did enough to finish it off. It also brought down the next Pokemon Lycanroc to his Focus Sash, but after it clicked Head Smash, my Beedrill was totally squashed. I then sent out my Pansage, who took it out with a Trailblaze to boost its own speed and tank a Psychic Fangs, doing major damage on the incoming Heatmore with Reversal, but it wasn't enough as we still get taken down by a Fire Lash. I then used Loudred's Ominous Wind to boost its stats 2 times and finish off Cradily, and while he did go down to Duck Trio's Earthquake, Devotion came in to do major damage with Scald, bringing it down to his Focus Sash again, giving Clefable the final hit with a priority Gem Missile to take out Steven. With the future champion defeated, I headed to the local gym leader who wasn't there. Brawly was somewhere in Slateport City and we had to go fetch him. He was standing in line with all the pirates at the museum, and after we told him we wanted to battle him, he headed straight back to the gym. And this now actually looks like a gym with people fighting in arenas, and if you want to take him on yourself, you also need to step into the ring with him. Luckily, this isn't a fist fight because I would definitely lose that against this boy, but my Pokemon were ready to take on anything he threw at them. Starting off with his water fighting type Monferno, which is just peak design. Just wait until you see its evolution. That's when you're going to go absolutely nuts. I'm able to take it out with just a single Thunder Shock from Loudred. I also get the incoming Kadabra under half health and paralyze it as well, so that Pansage can clean up with Trailblaze and hit the incoming Lucario with a Rock Smash, sending him to the Shadow Realm. Pawmot was a bit too much for me to handle, but Fluffy could take any punches with its gooey ability, use Fairy Wind to blow away Pawmot and the final Pokemon Hariyama as well. Now that we have 2 gym badges, more Pokemon are unlocked for me, so I head to the Slateport City Adoption Center, where I grab my own Chimchar and evolve it all the way into my favorite Pokemon in this entire game, Infernape. It has the best regional design I have ever seen in a Pokemon fan game, and it's clearly Luffy designed, and even though I haven't watched One Piece, I still love the aura this guy gives off. And his abilities make him even more broken. Blitzboxer, which gives him priority to boxing type moves. Iron Fist, which then boosts these kinds of moves, Long Reach, which boosts them by 1.2 times again, and Inflatable, which can up its defense and special defense if hit by flying or fire type moves. Yeah, this monkey is going to destroy a ton of dreams of other trainers. But wait, there's more, as we have also gotten a Pawniard, which I evolved into Bisharp. He's a fighting steel type, and his design is inspired by a Matador, as one of his abilities is literally called Ole, which gives him a 30% chance to evade single target moves. Partner this with Keen Edge, which boosts his slashing moves, Opportunists, and Intimidate, and you've got yet another broken Mon. I also ended up with a flying fairy type Turtwig that evolved into Torterra with a rainbow and magical tree on its back. This fairy tale creature can not only take a ton of attacks, but it can also dish them out. I also picked up a fighting ghost-type Doublade who is going to boost its sweeping and edge attacks, and because the level cap increased, I was able to do more evolutions of Pokemon that I already had. Like Exploud, who is ready to make your entire neighborhood angry with its boombox, Simipour, one of the best telekinesis users in the world, and Alakazam, who takes a lot of inspiration from Giovanni, turning from a physical attacker back into a special attacker and using his goons to do all of his dirty work. No, literally, he has an ability called Minion Control, which makes his moves hit an extra time for each healthy party member. Yeah, you already know we're going to show Archie at the museum what a real boss looks like. This fight here ended up being a little harder than expected because it's a gauntlet battle with 3 trainers who have 11 Pokemon in total against your 6. Luckily for me, we were able to shut down the first grunt with only 2 of my Pokemon fainting, giving me 4 more for the second grunt and Archie. On the second one, only my Infernape ended up biting the dust because of a shell-smashing Gorbis, and because I kept Beedrill for the final fight, he could just sweep up the entirety of Archie's team while using Icicle Spears, freeing the museum from the Pirate's Curse, which gave me enough battle points to adopt 2 more Pokemon, a Piplup and a Machop. The Piplup ended up evolving into an Empoleon that was a Fire-Ice type who was just trying to protect his egg from incoming predators with its insane abilities of Drought, Antarctic Bird, Molten Down, and Ice Scales. This makes his Fire types moves super effective against Rock types, his Ice and Flying type moves get an additional 1.3% power boost, and any damage taken by special moves is halved, which is just crazy. Our Dragon Fighting type Machamp, on the other hand, was ready to throw some hands. With Multiscale to halve damage from attacks while at full health, Guts and Iron Fists to boost its punching moves and regular attacks while statused, and lastly Impenetrable, taking only damage from attacks, which means I can put a Life Orb on him and he won't take damage if he uses it. Absolute insane scenes with these 2 new additions. Let's go see if May can handle them. But we didn't really need them, as Exploud used his Sonic Boom to take on Swellow, and Infernape used his 1-inch 90 base power punches to get a 1-up on the competition, taking down Rapidash, Sceptile, Starmie, and almost Vikavolt if it didn't have a Focus Sash. And then use Machamp and his large fists to clean up the rest of the battle so that we can reach Marvel City and get ourselves the Mac and Acro bike at the same time, which is unseen. I mean, having 2 bikes at the same time, absolutely criminal. So criminal that Wally got jealous and wouldn't let me enter the gym until we gave him one of our bikes. We weren't going to do that, obviously, so instead I showed him not to mess with me and my Reduxian team. Or should I put it this way, Infernape used punching moves and 90% of his team got sent to the hospital. And while a couple other Pokemon like Empoleon and Beedrill had to help out too, Wally ended up being one of the easier battles so far. After this, I entered the gym and thought I was tripping because of the floor optical illusion they had going on. Before taking on whatsoever, I had to make one change to the team, and that was evolving Pansear into Simisear. With its priority moves, we're going to be able to make a lot of finishing blows on Pokemon. But this fight doesn't start great, as we make a big mistake by starting off with Exploud against his Morpeko. I then swap into Infernape and get hit with a super effective Aura Reel, taking me down. But don't worry, we still have a lot of tricks up our sleeve, as Machamp and his ground-type Seismic Fist squash this rodent. I then made another mistake by misclicking Bullet Punch on the incoming Jolteon, which also sealed my Machamp's fate. And because of his speed boost, not a lot of Pokemon are going to be faster unless I use priority. And you guessed it, I made another mistake by using Beedrill and getting thundered. But then Simisear hit the field and showed everyone what he's capable of. Every time this guy hits the field, he hits a feint attack on the opponent, which is already huge. This brought Jolteon down to red HP, so I could use Fake Out to then take it out. I used a Lash Out and a Sucker Punch to take out Arctozolt, and 3 more Sucker Punches to deal with Kilowattrel, Rotom, and do major damage on his Mega Magnezone. Even though the Life Orb damage took its toll, which made my Simisear fade, I still had Empoleon in the back, who had a reworked Flame Burst in its moveset. This now becomes a special priority move that one-shots Magnezone from this point. And just like that, our 3rd gym badge is acquired. This gives us the ability to use Rock Smash and reach Fall Arbor Town, where May needs our help with taking down Team Magma, who have abducted a professor down at Meteor Falls. We say we'll follow her and be there in a minute, but little did she know I was going to team build before I went there, as a new gym badge mostly means an entire new team for me to construct. And so I got myself a Toxel that evolved into the Electric Dark type Toxtricity, with some insane abilities like Rhythmic that deals 10% more damage for each repeated move used, Phantom which adds the Ghost type to itself, so now it has 3 typings, Base Boosted, and Chunky Baseline to trigger a 40 base power Earthquake after using a sound-based move. Yeah, if this guy was playing a concert, I'd definitely go and see him. He would rock the entire crowd crazy, I already know it. The next one was a Circus Serena, a Psychic Fairy type with Momentum, Water Bubble, Limber, and Queenly Majesty, protecting it from any priority moves, halving any incoming Fire type damage, and doubling the power of Water type moves. On top of this, any contact moves it uses its speed stat for damage calculation, and because its speed stat is already insanely high, I don't have to invest anything in attack, just give it contact moves, and watch it bounce on any Pokemon that tries to stand in its path. Our Fire Poison type Gliscor with Violent Rush, Grip Pincer, Exploit Weakness, and Venoblaze Pincers is surprisingly not even the final form, as they gave this thing another evolution that we'll see later. And the only thing you need to know about this guy is that it can hit like an absolute truck. Or maybe I should say tank, as truck is probably not enough to fathom it. This next Pokemon, I already know a lot of you people are going to love it. It's an Ice Bug Flygon that also adds the Dragon type to itself with one of its abilities. On top of being incredibly cute and dangerous, it also has Frozen Soul, Fluffy, and Mountaineer, making it immune to one of its weaknesses, Rock type attacks, and Stealth Rock damage, and making him even more bulky while giving him priority in his Ice type moves, turning him into a very versatile Pokemon that can basically do anything you want. But we're not done here yet, as we have 3 more members to introduce, namely the Fire Grass type Arcanine, who not only protects the forest, but can also burn it down. He turns any normal type move into a Grass type one and boosts them, and also adds a 10% chance with Stench to flinch the enemy while negating any Fire type move that comes his way. He's definitely not as crazy as anything else we've seen so far, but he's just a good doggo that loves being here. I also got my Dark Ghost type Mawile, who's kind of been changed around with Sableye, giving it more of a support role but also boosting its biting moves insanely, which will come clear a lot more once we unlock its Mega Evolution. For now, I didn't really use her and instead used a Ghost type Houndoom on the team instead. And he had one objective in mind, sending as many Pokemon to the Shadow Realm as possible. You see, every time he goes under half HP, his special attack gets boosted. But if he knocks out a Pokemon and is under half HP, he will heal 1/4 of that Pokemon's max HP. So if the opponent keeps bringing him under half HP, he's going to keep getting boosts and boosts and boosts and get stronger to totally shut down the enemy team. And if he eventually goes under 1/3 of his HP, his Ghost type moves get even more of a buff. And if you think you can shut him down with a normal type Pokemon, think again, because he can hit those as well. With these godly Pokemon by my side, I headed over to Meteor Falls and showed Team Magma not to mess with us anymore, as Houndoom put in some decent work taking down Excadrill and Weezing before giving the mantle to Toxtricity, who took the entire rest of the team on his back and carried them to a victory by using uproars and causing earthquakes. After the battle is over, Team Aqua chases the rest of these grunts out of here and tells us that Team Magma is heading to Mount Chimney, so we should join them over there and fight in this war with them. I wasn't going to do this with the same team, however. It was time for me to buy even more Pokemon because the amount is just insane and I want to use as many of them as possible. So I got myself the Warlord Glalie, a fighting dark type that was possibly the worst Pokemon I used in this entire run. Like, he did nothing. Not only were his stats mediocre, but his abilities also were lackluster. With this next Pokemon, a fighting dark type Crabominable that looks like an alien from outer space, was super good, giving him abilities like Super Slammer to boost his hammer type moves, and giving him Spike Armor, which is a 30% chance to bleed the enemy on contact or offense, which is a new sort of status that damages the opponent until he uses a healing type move. And this is also not his final form, as Crabominable has another evolution that you'll see later. Speaking of new evolutions, what if Floatzel was a flying type and had an evolution? Well, stop imagining, because it's right here, Velozel, a super speedy, broken mess. As just like Serena, he attacks with his speed stat. And because that's base 150, he is going to shred anything that tries to stand in his way, just like the Flash. And the final Pokemon I'd like to introduce here is the Poison Dark type Dodrio that also adds Dragon typing to itself with another ability. So yet another Pokemon with 3 types, which means 3 stabs, but this guy is infamous because of his multi-headed ability. This lets every single move he uses hit 3 times, which is just broken. And not only do they hit 3 times, but every contact move is also boosted, and biting moves have a 50% chance to badly poison the target. So this bird is going to be picking a lot of eyes out. Now let's throw Maxi into a volcano, shall we? I start off with Velozel and use Fake Out and Ice Spinner to take on his first Pokemon, Crobat. I used Zephyr Rush on the incoming Lycanroc to bring it down to its Focus Sash. Little did I know he was going to have that, which meant my Velozel was dying to a head smash. Arcanine then cleaned up with extreme speed, but Naganadel was able to overpower my Dodrio because it ended up being faster, but we still had Flygon in the back with a super effective Ice Hammer to force out his camera. That thing goes down to a double edge from Gliscor, Ice Hammer finishes off Hydreigon, and Crabominable deals with Brood Bonnet. With Maxi and his Volcano King defeated, we headed down the mountain in order to build a new team for Flannery. I added Duosion to the team and evolved it into Reuniclus. A water-fire type is definitely going to be great against a fire-type gym leader, as I have a feeling these twins are going to water down this gym immensely. I also bought a godlike dino and evolved it into its final form, Hydreigon, a dragon fairy type that looks like an actual celestic being ready to smite you down. He has some insane abilities like Mega Launcher, boosting Beam, Pump, Cannon, Shotgun, and Pulse type moves so that he, just like Iron Man, can maximal pulse an entire team. On top of this, he sets up a Misty Terrain that lasts 8 turns and heals himself in it, and every move he uses is also going to hit 3 times. But we're not done here, as our final team member is a Fire Rock type Tyranitar with a burning engine, ready to melt and crush anything that tries to stand in this Godzilla's way. He's a little bit of a weird Pokemon, trying to be a tank but also a sweeper, but I guess if you want to compare him to another Pokemon, you can go with Colossal, but then a little bit stronger in basically every aspect. These new Pokemon were ready for a relaxing day at Flannery's spa, and that's kind of what they got, as she didn't really put up a fight. Velozel here was able to KO her Volcarona, Rapidash, Mega Infernape, which looks amazing by the way, and after that even Flareon before Skeledirge put a rock in my shoe. His mild annoyance was quickly blasted away by Hydreigon's Dragon Pulse, and even the last Pokemon, Scoville, couldn't do anything. Now that we have 4 gym badges, I knew that the next one was going to be my dad. I know he loves normal types, so I evolved my Bisharp into his final form, Kingambit, and got ready to make him as crazy as a bull. My new addition immediately shows his worth by one-shotting his Kangaskhan, and wait for it, Mega Slacking. He stopped laying on his fat ass all day and started hitting the gym, but that wasn't enough to deal with one strike of my Kingambit's blade. We did the same to Ursaluna, but when Porygon Z hit the field, his Thunderbolts got too much for me and shocked me into the next Pokemon. My Hydreigon, who yet again blasted it out of here with an Aura Sphere. My Tyranitar and his Heat Wave managed to burn the last 2 Pokemon, Hisuian Zoroark and Maushold, to a crisp for me to eat as dinner. In his defeat, my dad rewards me with a Mega Bracelet so we can start using those juicy new Mega Evolutions for ourselves. However, this also unlocked one new Pokemon for me in the Adoption Center. That's right, they're running low on their supply, but instead of adopting Pokemon there now, you can also buy Mega Stones. So a lot of our battle points will be going to that. But this new Pokemon I got was Seal, a new pseudo-legendary. They gave it a 3rd evolution named Baryong and gave it the Ice Dragon typing. An impeccable design that looks like a monster from the Monster Hunter series. But even though it looks so awesome, I thought it was pretty underwhelming in terms of stats. It was just a little bit too slow and got outsped by most things, and its bulk wasn't enough to carry it. So, despite having some really good abilities, I think they should have given this guy a little bit more speed. After that, another evolution happened, namely Gliscor into Magnimus, an incredible physical attacker with insane speed and also bulk to keep it alive. Let me tell you, this thing will send you straight to hell and back. Now our next destination was going to be the Weather Institute. On our way there, we defeated Steven yet again by melting down every steel type he threw at me, together with Magnimus and Tyranitar. After this, I chased all of the Team Aqua members out of the Weather Institute and got myself a free cast form who now has more weather options like a ground type version, but let's be honest, nothing is going to make cast form viable for use. So with that cast form bridge burnt, I headed to the other side of this river instead and fought May. And this was basically a back and forth battle. I would take out her Swellow with my Baryong, she would take out my Seal Dragon. I would send it to the moon with Clefable, she would send me to the ground with Sceptile. So on and so forth until her Infernape hit the field and I saw its Mega Evolution. If this wasn't already my favorite fakemon in the past, it certainly is now. I mean, just check it out for yourself. If this isn't peak Pokemon design, I don't think we're ever getting it. I wish I could use it in every playthrough I do. Unfortunately, it's only in Redux, and we have to get it out of here in order to progress. So I send out King Ambit, use a couple of Sacred Swords, and boom, May is defeated. We grab the Devon Scope off of Steven, defeat a Kecleon, and go to Fort Tree City for our next gym badge against Winona. She was trying to blow me away with all of the new wind machines she had installed, but none of them had enough force to foresee what I was bringing. Namely, a new Sableye that's a Fairy Steel type, as well as my Empoleon against a Rotom and Corviknight in a double battle. I spammed Sucker Punch and Flamethrower until both of them were down and out, and her next two Pokemon were Mega Pinsir and Braviary. Empoleon at this point has already bitten the dust himself, so I had to bring in Kimambit and use a Koto Cleave to slash that Psychic Bird into a million pieces, with Sableye also going down this turn. I send in Magnimus, and with its synergy combined with King Ambit, the rest of her team was a joke as they double up on anything that hits the field and wipe them off the planet. With 6 badges down, it was time for me to use some Pokemon that had never seen the light of day, like Cormoth, who's been sitting in my PC for way too long, as it serves as a grass tank that likes to be self-sufficient and heal itself up with Seed Sower and Grass Pelt. However, we all know that grass-type Pokemon are not the best tanks, so she really wasn't all that great. The evolution of my regional Beware Bewarden, however, was a lot better, being not only extremely bulky, but also very hard-hitting. This bear tries to infatuate and confuse its foes with its charm, so that he can basically strike them down while they're off guard. Simisage is basically a super fast fighting type special attacker that tries to boost its own attacks by going down in health and parrying with Mach Punch every time it gets hit. Amphibuzz, just like most of this team, tries to be bulky as well, while also being decent at dealing damage with a 115 special attack stat. But what if I told you that we could take Macargo, turn it into a grass type, and on top of that, give it another evolution? Oh, and he has an entire ancient Roman city on his back. Meet Escargnite. He's a grass rock type that loves taking physical damage and sets up stealth rocks every time he gets hit. He also has Harvest, so if you put this thing in the sun, he's going to recycle his berry every single turn. And if a Grand Palace isn't going to make me king of this Hoenn universe, I know this water ghost type Garchomp is going to bring me to victory. This shark is not only better than Jeff the Land Shark, he might have been the strongest team member I put on my team throughout this entire playthrough. Just listen to these abilities. His highest stat gets boosted by 1 on entry when it rains. He cures every status he gets when he's in the rain. The power of his slashing moves is boosted, and every move hits twice, the second hit doing 25% damage. Put that last one on a Pokemon with 140 attack, and yeah, he can basically one-shot anything, whether they have a Focus Sash or not. Oh, and did I mention that he has an awesome Mega Evolution that makes him even more broken? Wait, let me show it off against May. I use my Mega Evolution, gain the ability to replenish my own health every time I get a KO. I also boost my speed every time I gain a KO and gain a 20% chance to flinch. And on top of that, he has the most menacing design in this entire game. Yup. This is a top tier Pokemon, and even with low HP, while burnt, and not having an optimized moveset, this guy took 4 out of 6 Mace Pokemon down. The rest got swept under the rug by Simisage, and that took away May's fighting spirit. She never battled me again after this. So let's see who else we can haunt with this terrible shark. What about every single Team Aqua member that was trying to take over Mount Pyre? Yep, they all got thrown into the abyss. And because I wanted other Pokemon to shine as well, and this shark was just taking all of the spotlight for himself, I took him off the team for a little bit and added in my fire flying type Skarmory, who is also going to abuse its speed to do damage to his opponents, and with its Mega Evolution that you'll see in action later, it really becomes a threat. But this next one, the evolution of Crabominable named Crabruiser, is even better, as every single one of his Super Slammer moves hit twice, with the first one always lowering the opponent's defense. He basically gets the ability to crush everything in its path like a bug. I know that basically every single Pokemon I've said so far is overpowered, but if you make everything overpowered, nothing is overpowered, right? So yeah, most of these Pokemon do have their own weaknesses. I'm just trying to show you that nearly everything is viable in Elite Redux. With that out of the way, I want to introduce one more Pokemon, and that is Aegislash, who with its new Axe form is really going to cut down the competition, as it traps them in with Shadow Tag and deals devastating blows. But don't mind that, because it's time for us to head to the Magma hideout to confront Maxie once again. He's still obsessed with all of the lava around here, and we're going to knock some sense into him. But only after he manages to capture Groudon and even add him to his team, giving him his primal form and a huge menace for me to deal with. But before we see him, my Crabruiser smashes his Naganadel into the ground, but then his Groudon V-creates me and I'm forced to swap out. So I go into my Skarmory thinking he can't possibly one-shot this, but even with the attack drop, he still kills it. Aegislash also dies to a V-create, but my Alakazam can outspeed with a priority Night Daze and kill this Groudon, finally putting it back into the ground where it belongs. After taking down Mega Camerupt, Alakazam sadly dies to an Aura Sphere from Hydreigon, but because I still have my bulky-ass turtle in the back, we can Star Crash this, as well as the Duck Trio that comes after this, and the final Pokemon Blood Bonnet. Groudon then shoots off into space to harass Deoxys, and we photobomb an interview while Archie steals a submarine, which we end up ambushing at their hideout in Niliko City, but it was protected by one of their admins. This is where Mega Skarmory once again did nothing because it's a rain team, but Bewarden definitely came in handy, taking down a ton of Pokemon, while Crabruiser, Torterra, and Alakazam sweep up the rest. Unfortunately, Team Aqua had enough time to escape, so our next target was Moss Deep City, where we picked up a ton of new Mega Stones, and believe it or not, none of them were needed in the double battle against the local gym leaders Tate and Liza, as they run a Psychic Terrain Trick Room team, so I had to pull out all the stops by gathering all of the slowest Pokemon in my box in order to defeat them. Of course, before realizing this, I lost to them a couple of times with my regular team, but once Crabruiser and Torterra were on that field, they would not get off. These two alone showed their strength by soloing their team. And I might have forgotten to mention that this was also an inverse battle, so super effective moves would be not very effective and vice versa. Now onto bigger and more real threats like Team Magma that is taking over the local space center to get some fuel. My buddy Steven was already here fighting both of them, but unfortunately he kept on losing, so he needed my help to save the world again. Toxtricity and his Boom Bursts came in clutch again as they take down Gramble and Groudon without much effort. Steven and Serena then double up on the incoming two Pokemon to take both of them out, and on the final turn, Crocodile and Camerupt came in. That's when I showed my teeth with Mega Mawile, who seems to be inspired by the Egyptian goddess Cleopatra. Her Iron Fangs shredded through these two Pokemon like it was nothing, and so the Moss Deep City Space Center was saved. But the trouble didn't end there, as we got a distress call from underneath the ocean. Team Aqua is drilling down to find the legendary Pokemon Kyogre, and we once again have to stop them. Traversing the seafloor cavern wasn't any different from normal, except for one puzzle change that made it a little difficult, but in no time I stood eye to eye with Maxi and the legendary fish. They got ready to drown me under a huge wave, but I sent out my Infernape just at the right time. I Mega Evolve him as well and use Fake Out with an incoming 1-inch punch, and with that, Kyogre is defeated. The next Pokemon is a Go-Goat. Don't know how this got on his team, but Dodrio makes quick work of it with Dragon Rushes. But the Sword and Shield Menace Dracovish is outspeeding me way too much, and of course ends up taking out my bird. Before I can actually take it out with a different Pokemon, he swaps out into Buzzwole, so I go into Flygon, use Dragon Hammer and Ice Hammer to unjuice the Jimbro and slam out all of Dracovish's teeth. Infernape then punches Sharpedo right in the jaw, while Machamp uses Outrage to finish this battle. With the god of land and sea now on a rampage through the Hoenn region, there is only one thing we can do, and that is to let Rayquaza swoop down on his own without even telling him, so that he saves the world instead of me. Not that I really care that he took my spotlight, because we're in Sootopolis now, which means the final gym battle is approaching. But there was one more Pokemon I had to buy. A regional form of Psyduck that turned him into a dark type. And he doesn't only evolve into Golduck, he now has a third form named Sliduck. He looks like an edgy anime character that can deal some major damage, and I was right, because he has over 150 base attack, with abilities that lower the target's stats upon entry of the field, and adds a 20% chance to flinch to every move he uses, and his dark-type moves are also buffed. So I added him to my team and walked up to the two gym leaders of Sootopolis, Juan and Wallace. And they told me they were not playing around. First you have to beat 4 of their Pokemon, then the battle will end, and then you will have to battle them again with another 4 Pokemon, so 8 against your 6. Mega Hydreigon and Reuniclus start off against Volcanion and Keldeo, and even though my Reuniclus straight up dies first turn, Hydreigon is able to Pixie Beam Keldeo into oblivion. Next turn we use Aura Sphere and Giga Impact to take out both the Pokemon they send out, and with another devastating hit from Pixie Beam, Dondozo also falls. Now for the second part of this fight, Sliduck immediately lowers Lantern and Blastoise defenses, and while Blastoise gets blasted away with a Pixie Beam, Sliduck does go down by a Mega Evolved Lantern's Blizzard. Can I just say that this Lantern looks awesome and can probably light up the entire sea bottom if he wants to. Now no more Lantern blazing as I bring in Arcanine, use Power Whip and Pixie Beam to end this fight and defeat the final 3 Pokemon. The 8th gym badge is now mine, and when we head outside, May decides to take me to Victory Road, where we had a ton of battles still to go, but the most important one was against Wally. And if you thought Baryong was going to do something against his Arcanine where I'm actually super effective against, yeah, guess again, he just got one shot. But Magdamus and his Flare Blitz knew how to deal with this guy. When his Mega Latios tried to make a powder of me, I sent out my Glalie and used Sucker Punch. That's right, even this piece of trash got a kill before Baryong. Empoleon's Flamethrower scored Silvally, Tyranitar fired Urshifu, and my Mega King Ambit used Bullet Punch and Kowtow Cleave to Ole, Iron Valiant, and Shaman. Now that Wally's defeated, he finally leaves me alone, but I was far from my target of reaching the Indigo Plateau, as the entirety of this cave had been revamped. There is nothing the same about this cave that you know from the regular Victory Road. There's a ton of new areas, but the main thing, every single area has like 5 or 6 insane trainers for you to beat. And if you can't defeat them, well, too bad for you, you're not getting to the league. This part alone took me over 2 hours to get through, as I changed my teams nearly every single battle. But the payoff was absolutely worth it, as there were 2 caves with newly introduced Paradox Pokemon. My favorite one, Iron Exo, which is a future form of Scizor, straight out of the Cyberpunk universe. The second one, Iron Carapace, a future form of Centiskorch, which I unfortunately never ended up using. But there was also 2 ancient forms, Lumber Sloth, a form of Typhlosion that got pretty lazy back in the day. And finally, the evil snow monster that haunts the top of mountains, Blizzard Maw. He looks incredible, but unfortunately I also didn't use any of these 2. Iron Exo was the only one that made my final team. Speaking of my final team, I finally reached the Pokemon League, where I had the opportunity to buy one more Pokemon. as Mesprit, Yuxi, and Azelf all got regional forms too, but I decided to go with Azelf on this one. The Dark Fairy type was going to become a fast special attacker that also boosts its own Dark type moves and lowers the foe's highest stats. Iron Exo is going to be able to have priority on his electric type moves and do major damage with his artillery perk. These two, combined with Garchomp, Sliduck, Infernape, and Velozzle, were going to be my team. So I walked up to the Dark-type Master, Sydney, and told him he was going to be pounded into the ground. He wouldn't just lie down without a fight, as his Yveltal was menacing and ready to devour anything in its path. That included my Azelf as it got hit with an Oblivion Wing. I then brought out Iron Exo and used Electro Shot to boost my own special attack and take it out in the same turn because of my White Herb. Unfortunately for me, Hoopa Unbound got a priority Hyperspace Fury off and killed me the turn after. Sliduck tried to take it out with a Wicked Blow, which didn't really end up working, so Infernape had to come in with a 1-inch punch, taking it and Absol down. Greninja also didn't stand a chance, but I accidentally misclicked on Darkrai, giving it the opportunity to put me to sleep, which was the end of my monkey's carnage. However, Velozzle could outspeed and deliver the final blow, while a Garchomp with Wave Crash was enough to take care of the puddle that was Alolan Muck. First member down, now it's time for Phoebe, and I almost just needed to say one thing: Azelf used Wicked Blow, as 5 of the 6 Pokemon fell to it, but the final Pokemon Giratina decided to survive and sent me to the Distortion World. But with Iron Exo in the back, a Moongeist Beam and Electro Shot was enough to smite the God of the Devils. Glacia, on the other hand, was a bit more difficult. Yes, Articuno went down to a single Electro Shot, while Infernape finished off Mega Glalie and Regice with single 1-inch punches, but her Black Huron Extreme Speeds did major damage to Infernape and Azelf before I could crash into it with a star. But we yet again had Sliduck in the back with its Wicked Blows, punching the competition out of here with Frostlass and Weavile falling too. One more member before we face the strongest trainer in the region, and that's Drake. He's finally stopped beefing with other rappers and instead put his eyes on me. And he was coming out guns blazing with a primal Dialga, a beast that not even my Infernape could dent with its punches. But it did do enough damage so that my Azelf could use yet another Wicked Blow to finish it off, just like Reshiram and Naganadel, but Mega Rayquaza was a bit too much snake for my boot. Iron Exo did bring it down to a slither of health, so Velozzle could strike it out with a Fake Out. His last line of defense was an Ultimate Zygarde who took 2 Ice Spinners and a Sliduck's Wicked Blow before finally giving in and clearing the path to champion Steven Stone. He knew we were destined for greatness and were one day going to challenge him up here, but he didn't realize it was going to be this soon. And while this might be a very hard battle for me to face, I know we can smash any rocks or steel that this legend of a man has lined up for me. So we both throw out our Pokemon, and I'm immediately at a disadvantage with its Bronzong against my Velozzle. He also set up Trick Room, so once I brought in my Azelf, I got outsped and killed with Flash Cannon. When Sliduck was about to hit the bell, he pulled the emergency exit and sacrificed his Genesect instead. But he had a plan, using Magearna to try and overpower me, but that wouldn't work as Iron Exo's Electro Shot was enough to blast it out of the stadium and also melt down his Melmetal with Armor Cannon. Unfortunately for me, his Fused Necrozma used his Prismatic Laser to counter back to show me what a real beam looks like. But I still had an ace up my sleeve, throwing out my Mega Garchomp and using a combo of Last Respects and Shadow Sneak to devour this Psychic Lion. The next 2 Pokemon were the same typing, so I clicked Last Respects 2 more times and paid my respects to Pokemon Elite Redux, as we've just totally annihilated it. So my final verdict is that Pokemon Elite Redux is the peak of ROM hacks right now in terms of optimizing. It has everything you want in a Pokemon game except for a good story, of course, because that's just Emerald, but all of the quality of life improvements, new abilities, new moves, everything that this game brings is just groundbreaking. And with all of the new additions of Pokemon, Mega Evolutions, and even regional forms, I personally see this game going incredibly far as you can keep replaying it in any way you like. And as you can see at the end screen here, I used easy mode and still got 56 losses. Do keep in mind that 40 of these came before the first gym because I didn't have a lot of Pokemon available to me, but that just goes to show that you can make this game as challenging for yourself as you you want. This game is absolutely incredible, and if you haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend it myself. And if you guys enjoyed this video a lot, I'm willing to do way more runs, just like I did on its sort of counterpart, Radical Red. With all of that out of the way, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm Zwiggo, and I'll see you all in the next one.